The Ipswich Road runs to the south of the city and it's a very busy radial route. At this time there is absolutely no infrastructure whatsoever along the entire route. It serves the Park and Ride, the Tesco superstore and the proposed industrial park. It also serves the Eton Rise and Tuxwood housing estates. Concentrating on the northern section, we can see that there really is no alternative for the large number of people coming along Ipswich Road to reach the city. This section of road carries a lot of school kids going to the Hewett Academy and students going to City College, a large proportion of whom will be using bicycles. And it's also the way a large number of people will be commuting into the city by bike. Obviously, a major commuting route like this should be able to cope with a large number of bicycles and do so safely. In 2020, Norfolk County Council received some funding from the Active Travel Fund to build protected cycleways along this section of road. This was presented as being the first stage of a much bigger scheme to provide proper cycle infrastructure along the entire length of Ipswich Road, and as such it was a scheme worth supporting. Unfortunately, when it went out to public consultation, the Town Close School objected to losing on-street car parking spaces. This private school attracts people from out in the county who drive their children to school in the car. Following a meeting of the Transport for Norwich committee, it was decided on the casting vote of the chairman, Martin Wilby at the time, to remove the northbound cycle track between the Outer Ring Road and Cecil Road and to substitute it with on-street car parking. Unfortunately, this section is the most important part of the scheme. Without it, there is no safe route to school for the Hewett kids, and there's no safe route to City College for the college kids. The scheme really becomes almost useless because of this decision. It also puts a stop to the plans to build a cycle track all the way along Ipswich Road. And because of that, the Norwich Cycling Campaign withdrew our support for this scheme in 2022. So what's the effect of these parking bays? Let's have a look. The obvious problem is door strikes, when somebody opens a door as a cyclist goes past. This is most likely to happen at quiet traffic times, when everything is moving quite quickly. Cyclists are expected to ride in the flow of traffic. Now, if they're too close to the cars, of course they're going to be within door strike range. To be honest, this is quite a scary place to ride a bike, and viewed from the other side of the road, you can see there's quite a lot of people who avoid doing so, and they're finding alternative ways to get through. This is a pretty clear indication that we've got a big problem with this section of road. Also, traffic heading inbound sometimes moves over the centre line to avoid cars parking or park badly in the parking bays. This results in traffic on the outbound lane moving into the cycle track in order to avoid oncoming vehicles. Once the cycle lane starts, north of Cecil Road, we come to the biggest concern that we had with the original plan. That is the lay-by opposite the entrance to City College. The problem of door strikes is very obvious here, because the cycle lane confines you to the space right next to the parked cars. This shows what a serious obstacle this could be. That door occupies most of the space of the cycle track. Had it been opened just as the cyclist approached, there would have been no missing it. Watch the area inside the red circle. Here we have a car illegally parked outside of the lay-by but close to it. The door opens just as the cyclist is coming along. The cyclist takes evasive action but swings into the path of an oncoming car, which fortunately is far enough away not to cause a problem. The car then drives off along the cycle lane. This shows the terrible level of driving we have to contend with. But even if we had the most careful drivers in the world, the design of this lay-by would still be inherently dangerous. It's difficult to see how this arrangement could be improved to make it safe. A short distance on from the lay-by, it's quite common to see parents queuing to get into the Town Close School. This is not only illegal, you're not allowed to stop here, but of course they also block the cycle track. Is it too much to ask for a little bit of enforcement? Or perhaps the school could open its gates a bit earlier. It's not too easy to show this on the video, but there are a number of places along the whole route, on both sides, where drains and manhole covers are sunken below the running surface of the road. If you hit them on your bike, it's quite a jarring experience, and so it's no surprise that cyclists try to avoid them, which means weaving around in the cycle lane. This could have obvious problems, not least because the cycle lanes are not very wide and traffic is fairly close. This should have been sorted out when the road surface was relaid, and it's a real pity because otherwise the surface is actually quite flat. This is perhaps a lesson in reading the road and looking out for approaching dangers, which I admit I missed when I was recording this. If you watch the taxi driver, he does something both dangerous and illegal. He undercuts the traffic turning right by driving into the cycle lane. What I should have realised is that the car behind him was likely to do the same thing. And the result was I got sideswiped. In the event, no harm was done. We had a chat and he apologised. But the point is that white paint on its own is of absolutely no use in protecting cyclists. And you should never assume that just because you're in a cycle lane, cars aren't going to come along and hit you. Now, the wands are still to be installed at the time of making this recording. It's to be hoped that when the wands are installed, they'll deal with this sort of problem. I remain to be convinced. It partly depends how many wands go in, how close together they are, and how quickly they get repaired when cars knock them over.